Chapter 27. Here's help. Anger is self-poison. There is a scorpion in South America which, when angered, becomes so furious that it stings itself with its own poison and dies. This is a fitting climax to anger, because anger is, indeed, self-poison. This self-poison by our own anger has been warned against by the ancient philosophers. These warnings against anger have come ringing down through the centuries since the first recorded wisdom. Now the self-poison of anger has been scientifically documented by the research of modern psychology. The ancient Greek philosopher, Pythagoras wrote, "Anger begins in folly and ends in repentance." Modern psychology would add that, while the anger often is openly and vehemently expressed, the repentance which follows is usually repressed and festers in various forms of self-guilt in our subconscious. The backlash of our anger whips against our own feverish flesh and leaves scars which the future may never heal and which regret may never hide. As John Webster said, "There is not in nature a thing that makes a man so deformed, so beastly as does intemperate anger." The English statesman and historian, the Earl of Clarendon, wrote, "Anger hurts the one who is possessed by it more than the one against whom it is directed." And so it does because anger is self-poison. But let us not overlook the certainty that our anger also hurts others. And, in hurting others, makes them our enemies and arouses their anger against us. Anger begets anger. Anger escalates until the situation has all the charm of a swarm of attacking wasps. And the temporary exhilaration which comes from releasing emotion in the form of anger just isn't worth the eventual cost. Anger disguised as wit or cleverness isn't funny. It is cruel and it is costly. As Francis Bacon wrote, "Anger makes dull men witty, but it keeps them poor." There is much profit in silence, but seldom so much as in the restraint to remain silent in the tempting moment. Clever remarks which hurt others for the sake of a moment's wit are bad enough, but when such cleverness conceals the cutting edge of anger, the wound seldom heals. Heed the wisdom of the proverb, "He who can suppress a moment's anger may prevent a day of sorrow." And, modern psychiatrists will assure you that the resulting self-sorrow will last for much longer than a day. It may last a lifetime. So, the ounce of prevention principle should be applied to anger because, in the wise words of Tyon Edwards, to rule one's anger is well, to prevent it is better. For anger is like a storm at sea. The waves continue long after the tempest has subsided. The turbulence of anger cannot be quieted instantly by seizing the provocation. Temper tantrums will weaken your resistance to future outbursts of anger. Back in the 1st century, the Greek biographer, Plutarch, in his study and recording of the lives of his time, observed, "Frequent fits of anger produce a propensity to be angry and cause the mind to become peevish and wounded at the least occurrence." You can get high on emotion, including the emotion of anger, just as you can get high on alcohol or drugs. The effect of an emotional high can be just as dangerous and as damaging as that of alcohol or drugs. The hangover, which follows, is just as depressing, and the possibility of getting hooked is just as real. In fact, if you have or acquire a propensity for anger, there is a strong probability that you will become an anger addict, and this may be as physically, mentally, and emotionally dangerous as being an alcoholic or drug addict. In its advanced stages, anger addiction is almost as difficult to cure as alcoholism and some forms of drug addiction. We shall consider later in this chapter some ways to deal with anger, your anger or that of others directed toward you. But, first, let us examine some relevant aspects of anger. When a person is wrong and won't admit it, he often gets angry. But the flames of anger illuminate the error while they heat the branding iron of guilt. Anger is a wrong and costly diversion, since a prompt and frank admission of error will dull the edge of criticism and win, if not admiration, at least sympathetic understanding. Anger is used for emphasis in attracting attention. Today it is fashionable to be angry or, at least, to act and speak angrily. Thus, the angry protesters who are willing to shout for almost any cause about which they can give vent to anger in a succession of emotional binges. One can judge their true character by their manner of speech. A speech is like the ringing of a bell. One can tell by the tone whether the speaker is cracked or not. The strident voices of hatred, today so familiar, reveal the fractured emotional stability of the shouters. The heat of anger, the flames of passion, the fires of hatred have melted many an ersatz halo, leaving the wearer looking very silly, because nothing makes one look more ridiculous than wearing the wilted, dripping remnants of a melted halo. Life is too brief to permit animosity, resentment or anger to add to our difficulties. There is nothing to be gained by escalating trouble. So let us consider the preventatives and remedies for anger recommended by some of the wisest men of history. The greatest remedy for anger is delay, wrote Seneca. And Thomas Jefferson defined the delay. When angry, count to 10 before you speak. If very angry, count 100. This old and worn admonition has withstood the weirdest of frequent use. Sidney Smith also recommended delay to cool anger, and writes from his own experience, we are told, let not the sun go down on your wrath. But I would add, never write or act until it has done so. This rule has saved me from many an act of folly. It is wonderful what a different view we take of the same event 24 hours after it has happened. And we thank Reverend Smith for that very good advice. Speak softly, advised Solomon, whose very name is symbolic of wisdom. A soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words store up anger. In dealing with anger, we are dealing with an emotion which, like all other emotions, can be controlled. Since all emotions are our own responses, we can control the intensity of our emotions by consciously controlling the degree of our own responses. We can precondition ourselves not to overreact and, eventually, not to respond adversely at all. To laugh at provocation is to demolish it, then to foliage is to forget it entirely. The psychological need to conquer is as false as it is ineffective. It is much safer to reconcile an enemy than to conquer him. A reconciled enemy is no longer an enemy, but a conquered enemy remains an enemy still, and is all the more vindictive. You can assign most of your duties to others, but only you can forgive your enemy. And only you can deal with an insult. There are 3 effective ways to treat an insult. The first is to ignore it. But if you cannot ignore it, then laugh at it. If you cannot laugh at it, it probably is deserved and you should learn from it. Our antagonist is our teacher if we will but learn from him, not letting our emotions blind us from seeing lessons which our friends dare not try to teach. Throughout life, you will find that you will learn more and harder lessons from your enemies than from your friends. So, even if you cannot love your enemies, do not hate them. Being adversaries, they exercise your initiative and develop your strength. Being provocators, they challenge your discipline to keep cool. And, by keeping cool, you keep control. Control over others, control over circumstances. That is a condition worthy of your continuing efforts. It is the quiet mind,